everyone, and a very warm welcome whether you're joining us live or on demand. I'm Ellie Lucas, Development Officer for the National Activity Providers Association, commonly known as NAPA. I lead on NAPA's creative and cultural projects, and I'm proud to coordinate the National Day of Arts in Care Homes as well as our wider arts initiatives. At NAPA, we work with care teams, partners and providers across the UK to champion activity as a fundamental part of quality care. Today is all about celebration, connection and creativity. For those who may be new to NAPA, we are UK's professional body for activity provision in care. As a national charity and specialist learning provider, we support care teams to deliver person-centred, meaningful activities through training, advocacy and partnerships. We believe that arts and culture belong in every care setting, not just as a one-off treat, but as a vital part of everyday life. The National Day of Arts in Care Homes is one of the many ways that we bring that belief to life. The National Day of Arts in Care Homes was launched to spotlight and celebrate the incredible creativity taking place in care settings every day, not just one day a year. Our goal is simple: to promote arts-based practice that is person-centred, inclusive and joyful. This fully aligns with the NAPA standards of practice, especially around meaningful creative expression, community connection, autonomy and intentional inclusion. We know many of you are watching at different times of day and perhaps even in your break or between activities. So here's a little question for you to pop in the chat and get us warmed up. If your care home was a famous gallery or theatre for a day, what would its name be and what would be the headline event? We'd love to hear your creative names, so keep them coming in. Please also feel free, if you have any questions, to pop them in the comments and we'll be answering them at the end. Now, I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by two incredible guests today. Dunn, an acclaimed artist who has worked across community and care settings to champion access to the arts, and Asa Johnson, Service Improvement Manager for Anchor Hanover, leading on wellbeing across multiple care settings and embedding creativity into everyday practice. Each of them will share their thoughts on what the National Day means to them and how we can all make it meaningful throughout the year. I'd love to welcome our first guest, Alan. Alan, welcome and thank you for being here.
Hi.
Would you like to start and tell us a bit about yourself and your journey with care homes?
Certainly, yeah. Hi again, Ellie. Hi, everybody. My name's Alan Dunn. I'm an artist currently based in the Liverpool City region. And it's a really good question to start with. I was very lucky to study at Glasgow School of Art. Actually, 40 years ago this year I started. And that study was very much about collaboration. So sharing creativity and working with other people, primarily in communities. And that led to a lot of work with older people. So back in 1993, I was working with a pensioners action group in south of Glasgow, and then in Liverpool for 6 years with pensioners who lived in tower blocks. So it always is fascination of working with older people. And obviously that includes working in care homes. And thinking about it before today, Ellie, what really excites me is that it's that lived experience. It's the ability to tell stories. It's a fantastic ability to tell stories.
Yeah.
That some of the older members of communities have, and I can really work with that. You know, I'm a good listener, and I think those stories become the art projects. And where some of the techniques and digital experience might lag behind does not matter. So for me, working in the care homes was all about those stories. And I was one of the artists on the Where the Arts Belong project with Blue Coat and Belong, which is how I met NAPA, and that's why I'm so glad to support this event.
Absolutely, and I'm so pleased that you're able to join us, and you're also a member of the Arts in Care Homes Advisory Group, as well as Asa, who'll be joining us in a bit. And I'm very grateful to have yourself, as well as a wider collection of artists, activity providers, care leads, art organisations able to join me and help me guide this year's National Day of Arts in Care Homes and lend me all of your expertise. So to start with, what first inspired you to bring your creative practice into care settings? Obviously, you said you worked with a range of older people.
Yeah, I think that's part of a wider practice, Ellen. For me, it's about reversing that curve of creativity. You know, I've got grandkids, and I just adore watching my grandkids draw and make, and that everyone is always impressed by creativity. You know, oh, they can draw and they can make this, and I think a lot of my work and your work, our work, is about just challenging that fact that creativity dies, and it gets replaced by other, societal responsibilities and pressures, etc. And creativity, unfortunately, does wane. And for me, someone once said it's like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, then it will become, it will just lapse. It'll fall asleep. So for me, the work in the care homes, inspiration was just that, to untap creativity later in life is just as joyous as seeing creativity kind of earlier life. And in fact, I mean, I'm also lucky to teach in an art school at the moment, and I'm always advocating that people should go to art school later. Maybe not when you're 18, 19, 20, maybe you should go out and live the life, and then come back to art school, because there's so many techniques, and I picked up on some of them, that no matter what age you are, you can still have that kind of the adrenaline rush of being creative. So I think that's my kind of inspiration. It still is.
Absolutely. It's never too late to try something new or explore something that can tap that bit of creativity. You're absolutely right. So how do you approach co-creating work with residents when working in care settings?
Yeah, and this is the crucial thing, isn't it? This is what it boils down to. Ultimately, it's a profession. We're professional artists, you're professionals, and there are certain tried and tested processes. And the one that I mentioned, the Where the Arts Belong, it began with kind of two major things. One was called a residency. So you simply put an artist into a care home setting, and two, you trust them to come up with something. So again, I was lucky with the Blue Coat and Belong that we had this time and space just to maybe observe in the care home and maybe just see where the gaps are or where opportunities were, or be much more reactive and responsive. I know other artists can propose and be reactive. I do stained glass or mosaic, I will come in and do that. That's fine. I'm much more interested in reacting to the specific care home and the specific situation. And so in our sense, our experience, so that happened to take in COVID as well. So during COVID, I started working with, out of desperation, I was interested in working with sound, and that became these kind of homemade orchestras, and that became working with tongue twisters. I would never, ever have proposed working with tongue twisters because it was not something I'd done before, Ellie. So it was about responding to the situation, responding to the people I was meeting, and responding to some of the residents in the care home. And through that grew this magical project, because we kind of trusted each other to stand shoulder to shoulder. So I was learning at the same time. I didn't have an expertise in tongue twisters. I was shoulder to shoulder with staff and family members and residents. And for me, that was really, it was subtle, but that was really important. So I was learning at the same stage as some of the residents. So yeah, that's one way of working. I do believe in residencies, and something I'll touch on later, I think, or one of the questions maybe is around the role of agencies. There's a brilliant network in this country of art centres, of galleries, and those should always be the first port of call, I think. So maybe we can come back to that sort of process later on for people wanting to work with artists.
Absolutely, that would be great. But you're absolutely right. I think it's so wonderful that you really are led by the residents and what they need and want to, like we said, co-create the work that you're doing with the residents.
Yeah, and that does take, sorry to interrupt, that does take experience. When I started out as an artist, I would never respond and trust myself, and nobody would trust or respond, give me that trust. So I think that also takes time. So there is something to be said for working with artists who have that huge experience, and then maybe inviting some younger artists to work alongside them. So that mentoring scheme I've tried a few times is really important, because you do learn to, I think the biggest thing I learned working with care homes is what to leave out, and not to pile everything in and try and do everything every week and be kind of all singing, all dancing kind of circus, but just actually to be quiet sometimes and listen and observe and do very minimal interventions. So again, go back to the tongue twisters. Those were completely free. There was no materials. There was no storage issues. There was no, do we hang this on a wall? It was very much just using what was inside people. And again, from that became this really kind of extraordinary moments of one moment I keep referring to Mary and crew, who suddenly started reeling off tongue twisters as if she'd been waiting her whole life to perform these like beautiful poems and songs, and everyone was just shocked. She had this skill, and it's like, okay, what can we do with this talent? Or some of the COVID sessions whereby the video call wasn't as good as this. It was breaking down, as you remember that, and it was it was delaying and stalling and interrupting. But that all became part of the laughter, basically. So when language was breaking down, we actually celebrated that through the tongue twisters. So again, but that takes experience to leave out things and not say we can't do the session because the internet's not working. We did the session because the internet was hardly working. So again, that just took as a sort of subtle twist. But again, that just comes from the kind of experience of being allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think NAPA and Belong and Blue Coat, that's a crucial thing of working with. It's not just the artist in the care home. The role of the art gallery or the agency or NAPA or the art centre is really important, because what that does is it allows artists to make mistakes, and then go in the next week and tweak it a little bit, and then go in the next week and tweak it again. So it does, because creativity, I think, blossoms with less pressure. It's an obvious thing to say, but if you're relaxed, you're going to be more creative. So that's part of the kind of landscape we've tried to create here.
Yeah, absolutely. That flexibility and being able to learn from what you've done previously can really help make those sessions even more magical and meaningful than you may have planned.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. So again, it became the idea of putting a very, very complex, complicated project together. Behind the scenes, the mechanics are really complicated. But on the outset, it was actually hilarious and fun and quite simple and accessible. So that's the kind of model that I would advocate for.
Wonderful. I've got one more question for you, Alan.
Okay.
So obviously, I know you have already mentioned one slight moment from your work with Belong, but do you have a moment that has really stayed with you from your work in care settings?
There's been so many. I think there's been so many. There was actually one from another artist that was working alongside. So Brigitte Jurak was working with clay and ceramics in one of the care homes, and I was working with kind of sound. And the moment was stunning because Brigitte's work was completely non-verbal. One of the residents sat there, and she'd brought in some crabs from the market this morning. So there was a smell, and we're copying the shape of crabs. And this gentleman just sat there completely silently, copying this crab, completely engrossed, just with playing with mud and clay. And one of the support workers brought a cup of tea for him, and he didn't drink it; it went cold. So she brought another cup of tea, and that also went cold. I thought, this is great. And then another cup came, but also because his hands were dirty and he was so engrossed. So those 3 cold cups of tea for me was an interesting kind of gauge. It's almost like an evaluation scale of how engrossed he was in trying to copy nature using mud, like children play with mud. And that eventually became fired and beautifully decorated. So that was, for me, that's a real interesting moment for me, because that challenged what I was doing. Thought maybe it does not always need to be verbal.
Yeah.
And how do we measure and evaluate what we do? There's always a big pressure on how we measure and scales and this. So maybe the cup of tea thing could become eventually a kind of type of scale that we measure people's concentration and sort of focus. I'm not sure. But yeah, those are the kind of exciting questions for the future.
Absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much, Alan. Your work really does bring the standards of practice to life, particularly around creative expression, autonomy, and meaningful connection. We will see you in a little bit, and I'd love to welcome Asa on. Have a little. Hello, Asa. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Ellie. Thank you very much. It's great to be here as part of this launch.
Would you like to tell us a bit about you and your role at Anchor?
Sure. So, as you mentioned earlier on, I'm the National Service Improvement Manager for Anchor, and we are England's largest provider of housing and care for older people. And my role and the role of my team is quite broad. We look at various different areas, one of them being around that lifestyle provision, how we can really support the people living in our care homes to live well and live the lives they want to, in whatever way that may look. And obviously, as we'll go into, the art is massive in terms of all of our lives and how they're shaped. So yeah, always really fully behind the National Day and everything else that kind of comes from it.
Wonderful. It is so brilliant to have your support, and like I said with Alan, to have you as a part of our advisory group helping to guide this year with your skills and experience is wonderful. So thank you once again. So starting off, what does the National Day of Arts and Care Homes mean for you and your teams?
Well, it's an opportunity really for all of us, so our residents, colleagues, to really celebrate the arts and the impact they have for all of us. It's a good opportunity for us to use it as a time of reflection, but also to focus on what we've been doing and continue to do around the arts, and also explore new opportunities as well. You know, everything is so fast moving these days that it's hard sometimes to stop and think about what you're doing, because you're constantly moving on to the next initiative or moving on to the next thing that's cropped up. So to have a national day where you can almost stop and say, actually, what are we doing and what can we do? It's really, really important. So long may it continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Because although it's the National Day on the 24th of September, that's one day, it's about what's happening year round. We're celebrating on that day, but we really want to try and embed the arts into care services all year round, because it is really important. So how do you embed creative practices across multiple services?
So a bit of an obvious statement alert, the arts are so broad. So that means there's so many different ways that people can engage with creative practices. We have an internal service improvement framework called Inspire here at Anchor, and that is designed to, include in the title, inspire our colleagues and our residents to look at ways in which they can really enhance that experience for everyone at that care home. Through it, we encourage collaboration. So many of our care homes link with, when we think about the arts, they'll link with artists or organisations within the arts sector. And that's something that I really want to focus on with my team going forward, as I know there are so many different opportunities that we haven't yet explored. And, you know, some of the stuff that Alan was saying just a moment ago, I was making notes around, because there's loads of great ideas that I know that we really want to sort of take forwards and get involved with. When we think about this year and the year of musical expression, it's something that we're fully behind. It's such a great initiative, and we've seen some amazing things come from that already. Some, residents and colleagues have been sharing their talents around music, for example, with their wider care home community, creating personalised playlists and the impact that can have on everyday life within our care homes. And we've actually last month had a group of our care homes host their own Eurovision song contest type competition. So there's loads of different ways in which we're getting involved, and there's so much more that we want to do with that for the rest of the year. And, obviously music is just one of many art forms. But what I always say around art, or any sort of subject really, is that we move away from having a 2D view of what that particular thing is. So, for example, music, the 2D view of that would be where you listen to music or you perform music. But there's so much more that sits behind that: the history, the fashion, the politics or the social movements that are connected to it, the TV and film industry, sport, songwriting, the list goes on. And this applies for all art forms. So I always encourage everybody to think outside the box, to create sort of a diagram, a bubble diagram of an art form, and then think of all the stuff that sits behind it, and also at the forefront. And that's how we make the arts more inclusive. So if we think about just one art form, musical theatre, what else is connected to that? Costumes, makeup, the actual technical aspects of putting those musical numbers together, the dancing that might be involved, the lighting, and how important that is in terms of the whole atmosphere and way of storytelling. There's so much that sits behind it. So I always encourage people to have that broader view of whatever it might be, to really, really enable people to be involved in whatever that particular art form might be.
Absolutely. It's like you said, there's no one size fits all for how you can participate in the arts, whether you're creating art yourself from a song, a painting, or even a dance, or whether you're admiring someone else's work and how that can affect you and bring on those different emotions and memories. You're absolutely right. There's no right or wrong. There's no set way of how you can participate in the arts. I think the main thing is just that open mind and giving it a go. Well, thank you so much, Asa. Such brilliant insight on embedding the arts into your services, and also how others can as well, and how it's not just how people often see it being that face value of joining an arts and crafts session or having a sing along. There's so much more to so I'd love to bring Alan back with us to join us again now, and we'll get ready to launch this year's theme. I think something that a lot of people will have been waiting for, but we are very excited to launch this year's National Day of Arts and Care Homes theme for 2025 is green. And we want you to interpret this theme in your own way, whether it's looking at nature, sustainability, taking inspiration from everything around you. There's so much you can do with it, and we really want to hand it to you to be able to do with it what you can and get creative with it. So we've created brand new resource packs to help you plan, share and showcase your work throughout the year, not just on the day itself. There will be links available in the comments for you to be able to go and take a look and download your copy. But let's remember, the National Day is about the year. It's not just about a date in the diary. So we are now going to take some questions from the comments that have been sent in. We've had some great ones coming in. And our first one is, how do I start building partnerships with local artists? Alan, you touched on this a little bit earlier on. If you'd like to share your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is a crucial, part of what we're all, sort of trying to achieve. And Asa mentioned there about arts organisations. For me, that's the key. It's not just about artists. I think the first port of call is your local arts organisation. As I said, there's a great network of local arts organisations, studio groups, art centres, and even universities. So my first port of call would be, because that's the kind of creative network. Artists can be quite isolated sometimes. If you don't know the website, you can't reach them. So for me, I'd always advocate simply getting in touch with your local. Let's take a gallery, for example. They will always have a department which is either called participation, engagement, or maybe outreach. And they will have a network of artists who, like me, are interested in collaborative work and have a range of experience as well. So I think it's also clear about what type of artists you want to get in. Do you want a kind of younger artist, or do you want some more experienced artist who will come in and maybe shake it up a little bit? And I was advocating earlier for maybe a bit of both is a good model. But that also leads me to the fact of being aware of two things. Maybe try and build in a bit of R&D time. As I said, invite the artists in first, talk to them, get the artists to talk to your staff, because there will be skills within the staff already. And trust the artist to maybe put a project together rather than take one off the shelf. And the second thing is more practical, about being aware of kind of nationally agreed rates, etc., and what artists cost, and R&D, getting paid for R&D time. So preparation times are really important. We've campaigned for years to get paid for before the workshop as well as after the workshop, etc., as well as materials, documentation. So again, the first port of call would be, as Asa mentioned, arts organisations in your area. The first phone call, I think, or email.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you ever so much, Alan. So we have got another question that may tie into your answer to the previous one. What if I have no budget? Can I still take part meaningfully in the National Day? So do either of you have anything that you'd like to add to this one? I think before I do hand over to you, I do want to mention, I think that's one thing that's great about the green theme this year in particular. Especially when it comes to resources and things like that. With the theme green, you can use lots of recycled and repurposed materials and taking inspiration from the world around you, which doesn't cost a thing. So that's a really great way that you can have a budget-friendly participation in this year's National Day of Arts Care Homes, and also look at how you can do things on a lower budget and them still be really meaningful.
Yeah, I think just to kind of jump in here, I think we've been talking about developing this idea of the tongue twister, which, as I say, is completely free because you don't need any materials, you don't need any prep, you just need participants, and also you don't necessarily participants that are verbal. We've been looking recently at how can you do tongue twisters through movement or taste or braille or sign, or there doesn't need to be a kind of verbal tongue twister. So we developed this notion of lots of care homes developing their own tongue twisters around the theme, and maybe coming together to have, I like to say in the Eurovision, maybe have a kind of national vision tongue twister competition, which costs absolutely zero, because I'm willing to do I've offered to do some of the training of the staff, and then the staff will deliver the kind of inspirational tongue twister sessions. It costs absolutely nothing. So that's one way of getting involved without spending a penny.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
there
as well,
are so many. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Say as well, I think I completely agree with Alan in terms of again using that phrase, thinking outside the box a little bit. Obviously, we need to pay artists. So if we're involved with artists or organisations, absolutely we need some form of budget to be able to pay for that. But if you don't have a budget, or it's a limited budget, it's about looking within, again, your care home community, speaking to residents, colleagues, the friends and family of residents and colleagues. How can we make the arts really meaningful and person-centered within our care home? Who have you got connections with? What can you bring to the table? Look within the group that we've already got. If you're working in a care home where there's 60 people living there, that's a lot of people with a lot of experience and a lot of connections, and same with the team as well. So put it out to people. And again, going back to the year of musical expression, we've seen lots of that where residents have been performing because they have a particular musical talent, like playing the piano. So they've been sharing that talent with their neighbours. So yeah, I think looking inside your care home, always look outside the bubble and look at what's available to you in the wider community, but also what you've got within your own care home community. And also there's lots of funds and grants as well, and look at locally what there's available, because there may be an artist or an art organisation that has a pocket of money because they've been given a grant, and they're now looking at ways in which they can collaborate with people to see if you can tap into those. And with the theme of being green as well, link with local environmental groups that you might have within your community, because that could be a really good collaborative project you could do. And you may be doing recycling or upcycling or whatever it might be that comes at no cost or very little cost.
Wonderful. Thank you both ever so much, and thank you for being here today, and thank you everyone for watching. Just a little bit about how you can get involved. Please send us your photos, stories, videos. We love seeing your work. There's some information in the resource packs just about how you can do that. Tagging us on social media using the hashtag AICH2025, and let the world and NAPA see your creativity. Please also feel free to invite us to visit. We'd love to come and celebrate with you. So please just reach out if that's something that you would like. And again, download your free resource packs. They're in the comments below and available on the NAPA website. But thank you all ever so much, and let's make green something that brings joy all year round. From all of us at NAPA, thank you for your passion, your creativity, and your commitment to meaningful care.